What's up everybody, Sean here, and thank you for joining me today. When we talk about entry-level dive watches, we often tend to think about watches like the Orient Mako, Seiko 5KX, Kamasu, Ray, and so on. And then we have the Orient Kano, the larger, lesser known alternative to the Orient Mako. Now, while I usually don't go for watches in this size range, being offered a chance to review it did teach me some surprising things about it. But before we get into that, wristwatch check, and today I am wearing my Orient Kamasu. This is the 2nd gen Kamasu that I have reviewed previously, and if you haven't checked it out, you can check it out right up here. But back to the Orient Kano, and this is not a sponsored review. However, this watch was provided as a review unit to me by Big Time Singapore, the local Orient AD, so big shout out to them. This watch comes in a case size of 43.9mm, a lug-to-lug distance of 50.2mm. It has a lug width of 22mm and a thickness of 12.9mm. The case is made of stainless steel and it has a mineral crystal, not a sapphire, with a stainless steel screwed case back. Inside it is the automatic F6922 movement, which hacks and hand winds. There is a day and a date complication and a power reserve of 40 hours. This watch has a rated water resistance of 200 meters and it retails for 369 Singapore dollars, but you know that you'll probably find it for quite a good discount. So the Orient Kano is a relatively new model line, having only been released back in 2019. This watch effectively fills the gap for a larger size, entry-level dive watch. On paper, it does seem like Orient just simply produced a larger Mako or Ray. However, its execution is what actually impressed me a lot. This watch is not just simply an upsized Mako or Ray, and I will explain why in a bit. So at launch, the Kano already came in quite a few different flavors, and certain variants have been added and removed along the way. Today, this watch currently comes in the following variants. We have a black dial with a black bezel on a stainless steel bracelet, a blue dial with a blue bezel on a stainless steel bracelet, a black dial with a black bezel on a rubber strap, a black dial with red bezel on a rubber strap, a black dial with a Pepsi bezel on a stainless steel bracelet, a blue dial with blue and orange bezel on a stainless steel bracelet, green dial with green bezel also on a stainless steel bracelet, and a red dial with black bezel on a stainless steel bracelet as well, a blue dial with a blue and orange bezel on a rubber strap, a black dial with a black and gold bezel on a stainless steel bracelet with golden middle links, and a white dial with black bezel on a stainless steel bracelet. For today, we are looking at the model with a green dial and green bezel. So one thing that really surprised me is how wearable this watch actually is. I measured the case at 43.9mm, which is actually slightly larger than the Triton I reviewed a while back, but even so, it wears noticeably better on my 6.25-inch wrist than the Triton actually did. I would say this is mainly due to the 50.2mm lug-to-lug distance, which is respectably short for this case size. While the Triton felt svelte but long, and was crafted with a more refined and elegant look, the Kano is contrastingly denser, more compact, and blocky, giving it a very solid and chunky look and feel. Much like its smaller brother, the sides and bottom of the case are mirror polished, while the top of the lugs are circular brushed, giving it that tool-like aesthetic. The case design is pretty basic, with no intricate beveling between the two surfaces, which is expected for an entry-level automatic. At the 3 o'clock, we have a nicely sized crown surrounded by crown guards. This crown is signed and very tactile to operate because of its size. While not quite at the level of those you'd find on pilot watches, but not far from it, the back features a standard screw case back with the usual markings and dolphin motif typically found on Orient dive watches. Now, the bezel is one area that surprised me, so instead of simply making a larger Mako bezel, the one on the Kano is a completely different and more refined looking design. The edge of the bezel is circular brushed, and unlike the Mako, it is very cleanly cut, giving it a very solid grip, unlike the smoother and less grippy bezel on the Mako. The 120 clicks are also smooth with very minimal backplay, perfectly acceptable for this price range in my opinion. The bezel on my unit aligns very well with the chapter ring. While the aluminium insert is nice and glossy when it's new, just don't expect it to hold up well to scratches over time. Topping it off is a plain flat mineral crystal, pretty typical of entry-level Orient dive watches. Unlike the smaller Makos however, this one is pretty much flush with the bezel, which should offer it a decent amount of protection from glancing knocks. Onto the dial. If you like simple and sporty, this is definitely one to consider. A flat deep green sunburst face, rectangular markers, and a printed chapter ring are basically what makes up this entire dial. For complications, we have a day and date window cut out at the 3 o'clock that is framed only on the top and bottom by white borders. We have the Orient logo applied beneath the 12 o'clock. The remaining text is printed at the 6 o'clock, indicating the watch's 20 bar water resistance. We have sword hands for this, and they match the assertiveness of the rectangular markers, while a slender polished seconds hand adds a touch of elegance to the dial. I am quite happy to see that the minute and seconds hand do extend right to the chapter ring, which is something that we don't always see on larger sized entry-level watches. Now, while the hands and markers do provide plenty of real estate for lume application, it wasn't quite as bright as I expected it to be. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still on par with the lume found on the Mako and the Ray. However, the size of the markers didn't really correspond to the brightness of the lume in my opinion. It is still very usable, just that for the amount of room available on the hands and markers, I was expecting it to be a little bit closer to the brightness of the Orient stars. The F6922 movement used in this watch is effectively the same series as what you'll find in pretty much all modern Orient sports watches, a great movement at this price point. This automatic movement hacks and hand winds with a reasonable 40-hour power reserve and has so far proven to be pretty robust. Don't be fooled by the -15 to +25 seconds per day spec on paper, because more often than not, you'll find these running well within this. In my experience with several Orients using these movements that I own, they typically run within the range of +0 to +15 seconds per day, which is quite a bit better than other watches I've had around this price range, and close to watches that cost 2 to 3 times as much. Now about the bracelet, you wouldn't usually expect much of them in this price range, but I am quite tempted to say that I kind of like this one. Yes, it does have folded links, a stamped clasp, and it isn't particularly resistant to scratches despite being a mostly brushed finish, but that doesn't make it a bad bracelet. And let me explain. Aesthetically, the blocky end links and raised middle link of this oyster style bracelet gives it a solid look that really matches the straightforward size and design of the watch itself. I actually even had to double check that the end links were in fact folded links, because from the outside, they look so squarish and well fitted to the case that they almost seemed solid. The bracelet is also smooth and comfortable to wear, and I feel that this is partly due to the use of a stamped clasp, which tends to help reduce the weight of the bracelet by a bit. Of course, a milled clasp is desirable, but I never really felt this clasp wasn't solid enough for what it was intended for. We even get 4 micro adjust holes, which is more than some OEM bracelets found on watches twice the price. Looking at you, Hamilton. Overall, although this bracelet isn't as solid feeling as aftermarket options that cost as much as half the watch, and neither should we expect it to be, I don't feel any less confident about it holding up to everyday riggers. But even if it still isn't really to your liking, the 22mm lug width offers you an abundance of third-party strap options, so you have that covered. So to summarize, I actually ended up liking this watch quite a bit more than I expected to. When I first received it, it really wasn't the typical size that I would usually go for. Plus, I seldom look at green dials. But after having worn it daily for a while, the surprisingly good wearability and comfort of this watch, along with its straightforward, no-nonsense looks, has actually got me considering one for myself. Now, while it does lack the more premium features like a sapphire crystal and solid end links, of which I do already have quite a few in my collection, I still find myself being drawn to it for some strange reason. I mean, just show me a blue dial and I could very well be sold. Damn this hobby. As an entry-level diver, especially for the larger wristed people, I honestly think that this is a winner. And I say that after coming into this review with absolutely zero preconceptions. It has a solid case, a no-nonsense dial, and a robust movement, all for a price well under 400 Singapore dollars, and that is even before you factor in the generous discounts that often accompany Orient watches. If you're on a limited budget and you are looking for a dive style tool watch, or just want something that you can pick up and go, you should definitely check out this Orient Kano. And that wraps it up for today's video. If you liked it and would like to see more like it, please consider giving a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.